Oh boy, hello everybody, welcome in, it's Wireheads, I'm not dead. we survived MagicCon and the Concord that followed. For those of you who are new this week, hello, my name is Emmerron. I'm one of two co-hosts that run this crazy thing and have for the last, today's the 74th episode. Joining me, as always, is my co-host.
Hello everybody, Diamond here. I promise I have not left. Just things got a little busy for me.
We'll be
back to your normal programming next week. Don't worry.
Yeah, it's been hectic and complicated. But of course, in the middle of all of that craziness, complication, etc., today, as you're all seeing to my right on the screen, we have a guest. We have Jay Gray, the line lead for Cyberpunk Red at Artel
Hello?
Games.
Hello, is this thing on? Can anyone hear me?
Loud and clear.
Hi, my name is Jay Gray. I'm the line manager for Cyberpunk Red, which means I do a little bit of everything, or a lot of everything, depending on what that everything is.
That's very fair, especially for what we know about what you've talked with us about in the past. This is, I think, your third time coming on and talking about something.
Yes.
It's been 70 episodes since your first appearance. I think your first time was our third episode. So it's cool to have you back. So obviously, the last month has been a pretty big month of stuff for Artel Saurian in general. We had, Shadow Scars Core Rulebook dropped. Night City 2045's PDF release has happened. We have the quick start for Fossilized Violence. And we know Origins is coming. You guys are going to be there. Your first time in a while, at the very least. So yeah, it's been a busy time over at Artel Saurian. So in the midst of all of that, welcome. Thank you for being here. How has it been now that NC 2045 is out in the wild for you?
Oh, it's not out yet. It's not out until the physical book is in my hands.
Fair
and
enough.
Then I can breathe. Until that point, I cannot breathe.
Oh, you don't have your own master copy?
I have at this point, it is at the printer. I have a galley copy, which is a bunch of uncut pages version of it. And I have a copy Cody got made at Minuteman Press just to see how it all came together. But I do not have. I will not have. I will probably not get a master copy until a little bit before my first copy until a little bit before Origins. Generally, they send one directly, and the rest get sent to the warehouse.
Sure. Well, and that copy that Cody had made, that was the one that you guys had at Gamma, right?
Yes, it is. It is this one here with the incorrect logo, because I needed a placeholder. But yes, this is the copy we had made for Gamma.
Logo?
No,
It is not the correct logo.
The correct logo is the one on the PDF that we have.
Yes.
It is different.
Yeah, the one on the Gamma prototype copy, beta copy was a neon-esque logo. The one on the final version is more of a eroded block logo.
Yeah, I'm actually curious after seeing. Just while we're talking about that, there's a point of curiosity about that. What made you decide to kind of shift gears? Because all the other Cyberpunk Red books to date, the hardcover ones, have had kind of the block of black at the top along with the logo, albeit most of them stylized their own way, but still there's like a bit of that trade dress similarity between them. And obviously for Night City 2045, there's a difference there for those of us who have the PDF, where that burned logo at the top is just kind of flows into the artwork more. What made you guys, or you in particular, decide to shift gears from the like black block at the top there?
So you are right. Normally, our trade dresses, we have a black block at the top with the title and any subtitles, and a black block at the bottom with the tagline, a smaller one. This, however, the Night City cover art tells more of a vertical story. Or if you look at all the other books, well, we always repeat the cover art on the first page because we want you to see the whole thing as much as possible without titles in the way. But if you look at past products, for the most part, there's not a lot going up at the top, and so we cover it. But the Night City art was just tells so much story, all from bottom to top, that we really needed to uncover as much as possible.
Yeah,
especially with Morro Rock being there, and we barely knew much about Morro Rock leading up to this.
Yeah, so we experimented with different things, and like I said, the sample you saw at Gamma, Charlie, was literally using a cover template that I have set aside for all covers. And then once I sat down more seriously with it and started playing with the logo and the cover layout, we came up with the one that was ultimately used.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think obviously it's very, in its own way, it kind of pays homage to the older Night City source book for 2020 by doing it that way too. So I
there's
thought
definitely that.
Yeah, I felt like that at the very least was a neat knock on if that wasn't part of the plan itself.
The cover, when we designed it, Winter J and I, our art director and I, when we designed it, we specifically went first. If you look at the old Night City source book cover, classic cover, one of the best. Seriously, in my opinion, the best of all the 2020 source book covers. There is that below worm's eye view of the guy from down below and the buildings up around, forming kind of a square around him, a guy we call Cyber Dude.
Yeah.
And you get that very claustrophobic. He's trapped in the city. He's got a gun, but he is overshadowed by these giant monoliths which represent corporate power. And he is trapped there. And we actually took an opposite approach for Night City 2045, where we very specifically picked Cyber Dude Jr. And his partner above the city looking down, because we wanted to point out in 2020 there's nothing you can do. The corporations always win. And in 2045 you have a chance to carve out a piece of the city. So instead of being trapped by the city, you have a chance of being on the city. Now you're on the city on a rickety old AV that's falling out for any minute with absolutely no protection, but you have a chance to be above the city and look down upon it. Where in a very classic, height represents power. Being at the top of the skyscraper is better than being at the bottom of the skyscraper kind of mentality. So that's what we went for, a flip of the cover's dynamic in storytelling.
Yeah, no, one, I think it is kind of crazy even looking at like kind of the societal dynamics of the time of the Red. I don't remember specifically if it was you or if it was somebody else that I heard kind of mention it this way, but that the time of the Red is kind of the low point of corporate power in the timeline that we currently understand, essentially. It's not that they're powerless, but that they're at the lowest we've ever seen them in terms of their influence and power. So by extension, edge runners and regular people in the city have a little more of that freedom that the cover almost kind of narrates in its own way. I do find it interesting. Yeah, go ahead.
So if you look, we specifically tell that story with the old combat zone, where you cannot imagine in 2020 or 2077 some guy coming back from mercenary work with enough money to buy the seat for his district and to try to. We all know he's probably got to fail ultimately, but he actually had a shot, and that was not something you can. It's not something you can imagine happening in 2020, where, as James Hutt put it very neatly. 2020 is the time where you work for corporations doing corporate things below the table, because all the corporations are butting against each other leading up to the Fourth Corporate War. 2045 is when you work all over the place for all kinds of jobs, community and not community, and you have a chance to build community if that's your choice. 2077, you don't even have the 2020. If you look at all the jobs people take in 2077, almost every single one of those jobs is stuff that falls through the cracks. Corporations no longer need you; they have their own people,
Right.
and so the jobs you tend to do are the little jobs. So in 2020, edge runners are operatives. In 2045, edge runners are potential power players, and in 2077, edge runners are cleanup crew.
Yeah, no, and that is very true. Because yeah, by the time we hit the 2070s, it's literally like you're either playing by corporate rule or you're getting crushed underneath it. There's no in between. So like, enjoy what we have for you. The table scraps left for you, dogs of the street, kind of thing. So no, that's incredibly true. I did find interesting as well then how the both covers, 2020s and 2045's covers, both play with that verticality too, just because it is such an interesting perspective to use when we're talking just about how you frame it. Obviously, bottom up for the old one and top down for the 2040s art, but still very, very interesting that both of them, you guys decided to go that route. And I think that is a really cool choice. But I guess to get started with some of the questions, so obviously as media more in the space of cyberpunk and the community around it, this is a book I know a lot of people have been waiting a long time for. There's a lot of people who wanted detail, and I know you're no stranger to this, having been kind of the lead admin on the Discord for a long time before becoming line lead. There were a lot of people, I think, clamoring for more detail about the city, its players, etc., for quite a while. What led to the decision to release a source book for the city now versus earlier on in the product line? When we're talking about, it's been almost 6 years since Red came out, 5.5, but approaching 6 years since Red first came out as a core rule book.
That is, I want to give a deeply authoritative answer which satisfies and talk about supply chains and product blah 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 blah. But the truth is that's just where it fell. We started off with the core rulebook came out, and the core rulebook came out with COVID, and so we were dealing with that. We were dealing with we looked at what our priorities were and what we had resources for, and first we're like, okay, what do we need? What is our, and a setting book is neat, but there is already more lore information in the core rulebook for Red than there was in 2020, and so we felt that the gearbook, Black Chrome, was more important. Also, Black Chrome was partially finished by that point. It needed a lot of work to convert it because it was originally designed with a slightly different rule set in mind. But we had Black Chrome almost done, and then after Black Chrome, we were like, wow, that was a very expensive book to make. And so we're looking at, and the Danger Dossier came out of that because we went from having a book with Black Chrome had the equivalent of 2 books worth of art budget, and so we had to come up with a book that had as little art budget as possible. And so Danger Dossier made use of assets created by Monster Fight Club, and we worked with them to create that. And then, of course, we're looking at it, and the biggest thing we came across was not what is Night City, but I'm coming from D&D 5 5th edition, or I've never played a game before at all. How do I run Cyberpunk? This is really important. And so Tales of the Red Street Stories became very important to us because we needed to give examples of how to run some different kinds of missions in that. And so once those were out and we're looking at it, side projects, the Netrunner card, the net running deck, the trauma deck, that kind of thing, the data pack, the GM screen, obviously, and then interface Red and DLCs. And also because there was less pressure because we were putting out the DLCs were doing things like telling you about housing. But at that point, in 2023, we were like, okay, we need to start working on this. 2024 comes, and we have an annual summit generally where we talk about what our schedule is going to be like for the next year or two. 2024 came out, and we were saying, okay, now we know, let's put it on the schedule. At that point, I started putting it together. And that's, and then we knew it was going to be a 2-year project because it is such a large, expensive book. It took time to make. It took time to put together the beginning. It took time to get the writing in. It took time to get the art in. The art, though, there are, not counting the maps, there's things like, and the chapter, and some of the chapter headers at the beginning. There are 24 district pieces, I believe. And each one of those took me days to write the art scripts because I had to go through and say, okay, here's my point of reference, and then I said this building is this, and this building is this, and this street is this, and try to make it match the maps as much as possible. It was very detail oriented. We want to make sure we have these cars and these people and wearing these clothes, and so it was a lot of work to go in, and so it was a 2-year project. It's just that happenstance just showed us that between we just needed to work on other projects first. Black Chrome, like I said, Black Chrome was halfway done, needed to be done. Danger Gal Dossier was a project of opportunity after that. Tales of Red Street Stories, we felt it more important to teach GMs how to run Cyberpunk than to get Night City out. And then Hope Reborn came out because we realized that Night City 2045 would take 2 years, and we needed something out before then. Oh,
interesting.
So we put together Hope Reborn as a project I could work on while working on Night City. Actually, single player mode came out in kind of the same way, where we realized, okay, we had hoped to get out Night City 2045 last year. We couldn't, and we were like, oh, well, we really should have something out to help fill that void. And that's where single player mode came in. So it would have been great if it was sooner, but because it wasn't out sooner, and this is the really cool thing, we had 5 years to develop Night City before we developed Night City.
It's true.
We had the DLCs with the housing. We had all the locations, the street stories, all the locations, and Hope Reborn. We had all the lore recreated with Yang's Wheels and Agents and even Black Chrome, and we really, little things here and there. And 5 years of monthly DLCs plus 3 or 4 supplements created. We went into it with over 150 locations already made. Tons of NPCs to draw on, a lot of lore, a much firmer understanding of the corporate structures and infrastructures and players and gangs. If we had turned around and made Night City our first book, it would have looked a lot different because we would have been making everything up there. It's not a bad way to do things, but in making and working through a more organic process over several years, we got what I consider a very good and maybe even better process than we would if we just made it up cold from the start.
I think that was like the other part of that question was like, did the other supplements and DLCs impact this? Because one of the things I think of is like the data pack, drop those 20 locations in there.
Oh my God. I've said this before. I think Melissa Wong created like a third of Night City by the time we got to this book.
Really?
Just through the data pack locations and the stuff she did for both Hope Reborn and Street Stories and the Halloween screen sheets. Melissa Wong created quite a few pieces. James Hutt created quite a few places. I think I remember doing a count at when we put out the Night City Atlas, and of the 140 something locations in there, I had invented. I could claim credit for inventing entirely, as opposed to reinventing or bringing forward from 2020 7 locations or something. And it's like
okay.
And it was like mostly Melissa and James at that point, and stuff from 2020, and that's changed obviously now since then. But yeah, Melissa Wong's in a lot of strange ways, a lot of Night City was born out of the data pack and Melissa Wong's 20 location sets.
Yeah, I mean, that's, I think, the first set dressing we really had in general for the city at large. And, like, it started breathing life into what, up to that point, was a fairly amorphous, like, urban environment that had like a couple of boundaries in terms of the districts and kind of the feel that we got for those in the core book. But then like Datapack breathed some life into that, and then housing breathed more life into that. It was like a staged thing ultimately.
And the things in there came forward. The Mo poser gangs, the Mo aesthetic poser gangs eventually evolved to the G3. With help, we merged that concept with a Cyberpunk V3 concept and brought it forward. We the Princesses of Justice came from the data pack. Separately, we had another writer named Jay Parker worked on the data pack too, and he created a goth gang. And then Melissa created a goth gang. Those two goth gangs got merged together to be the Sinful Atoms. So a lot came out of that initial things, and then more will come on. The continuing storyline that James has for the Andersons, which he started in the Jumpstart kit, and he's continued here and there for DLCs. Are there. Or more specifically, the story of Molly Anderson. So that comes forward from those things and little things. Like I said, Yang's Wheels come forward there. In fact, Yang's Wheels set up a lot of the industrial district and how we envisioned it, not just being like the big powers, the concept of new companies, neocorps, and city and regional trade being a major driving force of the economy, which you see in NC 2045.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's wild when you put the development timeline together specifically there and kind of illustrate like this is how things have moved over the last like 5-6 years of development, like contextualizing that's a wild curvy road of like, oh yeah, and then we got here. Because that is just a crazy thing to think about, how many hands have now touched Night City after this book, and before it was relatively few had really dove too deeply into that.
I feel that does really bridge into this next question pretty well, because I remember back in Gen Con 2024 when Emmerron and I were sitting there in that seminar, and you guys had announced Hope Reborn and Night City 2045 and a lot of these others. And you just mentioned earlier that Black Chrome was well into development when the core rulebook had come out. Where would you have considered, like, what phase of development Night City 2045 might have been when you announced it? Was it...
Gosh. I would have to go back and check my notes for sure. I had to dig through a lot of documents. What I will say is I think by 2024, I had the core document mostly done.
Okay.
I want to say at least that was done. I can't remember if we announced the writers. It was.
You did.
At the convention, you did.
The writers.
Okay. Then the core document was done. I want to say we were fairly far along on the map, and the core document literally contained every piece of information we had on Night City at the time. It is a giant, enormous document. I expected the writers to come in and say, "Oh my God, I can't believe you're making me reading this horribly long thing." But for the most part, they're like, "Oh, thank you for actually giving me." One of the writers we had on this actually worked on a major commercial property at one point, and he said, what they gave me when I started working on that, and I said, I expect you to give you a 300-page Bible, considering how old the franchise you're working on is. He said, they gave me nothing. And I was like, so I really appreciate this. And I was like, well, it's just because, so it was fairly far along. The writers were announced at that point. The writers were at least working on their first drafts.
Oh, first drafts. Okay. So
yeah, because they started working on their first drafts the minute they were hired.
Okay. Very, very, very cool. Yeah, because that was something that I know. Like, we were both kind of curious, like how far along things were by the time you guys were like, "Oh yeah, this is coming," and because I know
we try to make sure.
Yeah.
We have learned from the past, and by which I say Rusted Chrome and Future books. We have learned from the past that if we announce things that we're thinking about working on, then it causes trouble on the line. So we've gotten to the point where we're very clear that we don't announce a thing until we're very absolutely positive it's something we're going to do.
Right. The project is working.
The project is in process and happening.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
That makes sense.
Okay.
So when it came to kind of deciding who was writing which districts, was that something where you had certain people in mind immediately, like, hey, I want you specifically to write for this part of the city? Or did that, because obviously I can think of like Linda Evans, for example, having done work on Hope Reborn with her kind of chunk of the city there being in Woodland Park for that book, and then obviously expanding that a little further from there for Night City 2045. Did you have specific writers kind of in mind for which parts of the city they were going to take, or was it something where there was a discussion between everyone that was brought in to write on it, where there was kind of a bidding, if you will, for who got what?
That's great. If I held an auction, no.
Yeah.
No. So this was yes. Whoever takes the lowest per pay per word. The district they chose. No. So to make something clear, as I was sitting down and thinking about who was going to work on this, who's going to write this, there's a couple things happen. First of all, I had to work out an outline, which I did, and I decided what each chapter was going to be. That's not a problem. You know, some things were obviously in-house, so to speak, like me, Mike, James. The facts section had to be in-house. So the information there was too in our heads to farm out. But then it came to the districts, and as I'm sitting there making my list, I have just this list of writers. Every writer that's either worked on a book in the past, or every writer I know I want to work with in general. It's a very relatively short list considering how big Cyberpunk is. I knew this was important, and in a lot of ways, Night City 2045 was probably the most important book we ever put out in the line. Even more than the core rulebook, because core rulebook stands by itself, but at the Night City, the original Night City source book is so beloved. It is so iconically classic that I knew that if we didn't make this the best book it could be, that we can make it. And I'm not saying it's as good as you guys make that decision whether you think it is or not. But if I couldn't try to make it as good as possible, we'd never live it down. So I made writers, and then I sat down and I wrote little sentences as to what I thought each district should be, what the feeling was. And then I said, okay, what do I want? And the first thing I did is like, okay, some of these districts need experts. So when a lot of people work on a lot of companies work on a role-playing game, for example, they'll have their regular writers write something, and then they'll hire an expert to do consulting. Like we did this for Shadowscar. There's a lot of Japanese culture and mythology in Shadowscar. Cody hired a expert to go over it and make sure that we were saying the things we wanted to say, and we weren't offending people by accidentally saying, okay, you know, this thing which, you know, we thought was funny turns out is a very serious thing, or vice versa.
Right.
We had sometimes they're called sensitivity experts. I tend to think of them more as field experts, whatever it is.
Sure.
So I figured the best way to avoid that, having the extra cost, and it does cost, you pay them good rates, is to have experts in the first place. And then the writing will be better if they're experts in the first place. So in a lot of cases, Little China, I asked Melissa Wong to work on, because Melissa Wong comes from the region, knows the language. You know, I had someone who speaks Mandarin Chinese come in to write Little China. I had sorry, I'm going to say his real name as opposed to his pen name by accident. So, Kosetsu. I had Kosetsu come in. He is the person who translates Cyberpunk into Japanese.
Okay.
In Japan. And he's worked for us. He worked on Danger Gal Dossier. And I said, hey, would you like to write Kabuki and part of Old Japantown? Because I wanted it to, I wanted to be someone who could say, yeah. Rather than have to find out later that this word means nothing in Japanese, I want someone, or you know, this concept's not there. I wanted someone there. And it goes to beyond more than just culture. I asked Mike McDonald to write the Old Combat Zone, because Mike McDonald has an original 2020 writer, has that flow to it. I asked Fran to write Hot Zone for the same reason. Fran's a good old-fashioned 2020 fan, and I knew that she would get that there. I asked Rob Barefoot to write Pacifica because Rob lived in Orlando for so long, and I wanted it to have that Orlando theme park feeling. So I started there, and then once I got the sections that I felt like, okay, I have my experts. I needed these sections to be written by experts. Then I looked at other writers. I got Chris Spivey, and Chris Spivey, he did the Zoners in Daniel Glacier, so I wanted to do South Night City because that's a natural extension of that. I got Linda, and I did not assign Linda North Haywood, despite the fact that she created Woodland Park.
Right.
But I assigned her to Charter Hill because I wanted her dry sense of humor to underscore the Yuppieville.
That checks out, actually. That makes sense. I got Eddie Webb to do Little Europe because he's in Europe. He lives in Europe, and so he kind of inject some of that feeling into it. But also just because Eddie, as a writer, is a tremendous old school Gothic writer, and a strong proponent, has a strong background in European literature. I got Steve Kenson to do New Westbrook because Steve understands cyberpunk on such a visceral level that most people don't, from his days when he was writing for Shadowrun. That I didn't want Shadowrun, I don't want Seattle, but I wanted someone who could get cyberpunk, because in my mind that district is the epitome of,
the
here's
have nots.
Exactly. And I wanted someone who could get that on such a basic level to get that. And then Grant Bass, it's the first time we worked with him. Grant Barber. And I assigned him Watson, though, because based on the stuff he's written in the past, I knew he would do a good job and he would come at it with fresh eyes. Mike McDonald, and then sometimes a couple, Crystal Mazer, I gave University District because she's a teacher. I know that sounds weird, but she understands education in ways that a lot of people don't. I gave it to her. And then there's, I said, okay, Rachel, what?
So I saw Fernando for
Fernando
Damas
got Santo Domingo for exactly the same reason that Melissa, because I knew if I had him there, the Spanish would be authentic and it would feel like it's a piece of South America and Central America, pieces of it lifted up and put in there. It would feel like the culture came north and immigrated into it. Trace Wilson got what he got because I knew he would do a good, solid job in a very diverse working class neighborhood. And then I had a couple districts left over, and I said, "Hey, who wants a second one?" And the people who volunteered for a second one, I assigned the second one. Crystal got the Port of Night City, which not the Haywood Docks. I feel really bad because they were originally not the Haywood Docks. They were literally on the other side of the canal, and then we realized that the island had too many places, and it made more sense for it to be next to the industrial zone, and so I had to rewrite all of her stuff. Not her fault. Mike said, I want to take another one, so we gave him the Port of Night City. He did an amazing job there. And then Linda, I assigned to
Upper Marina.
Work with Fran on the Upper Marina, and Jolly, I assigned because I wanted Old Japantown to feel like it used to be all Japanese. And then, that changed. And so he was there to insert the change into it. So yeah, everybody was assigned based on what I feel, whether their expertise was or whether I thought they could nail the feeling of it. That was really important. And then James to me says, I really want to write Playland by the Sea. It's like, oh, you want to write the entry for Playland by the Sea? Yeah, I can give you like a half a page for that. He said, no, I want to write the entire Playland by the Sea. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, give me a second. I guess if I reduce the number of locations in this thing, and I can take out a page of each district, I can put in Playland by the Sea, and then and so that's more or less what happened. And so I said, okay, go talk to Rob. I want to make it feel like Playland by the Sea actually is in Pacifica and not next to Pacifica, but go ahead. And so that got put into, and the book is much better for it, absolutely. But it was not originally in the plan to do it to that degree.
I talked with Jolly a little bit also about the development of the Reclamation Zone, which don't worry, chat, we will have N Jolly on the show at some point to talk about the Reclamation Zone, especially for my fellow train enjoyers. We will get it. And then also Rachel, I feel like that name's familiar.
She wrote the screen sheet generator. Oh,
okay.
There it is. Yeah.
And,
all right.
Quite honestly, Rachel is one of the best writers I've ever worked with. All the writers I work with were fantastic, and I cannot say enough about them. If you happen to need writers, please look at the credits of this book and consider hiring some of these people. But Rachel is a joy to work with because Rachel, in addition to having a degree in journalism, is amazingly precise in how she writes, and that is a joy to work with. It was always fun to see this makes it seem like some writers are better than the others in the book, and that is not true. But it's always fun to see. James went through the entire book and did a content spot check, district by district. There's always things like which ones he can recognize without knowing who was writing on it based on previous work. Like Steve worked on The Adventures in Danger Dossier, or Eddie's adventure in Hope Reborn.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, I mean, and there's, once you know what you're looking for, they're definitely like the little hallmarks of style and stuff that you can just like pick apart from the, because tonally, obviously, I think the book still stands as like a pretty solid whole, and tonally it doesn't shift very far from that kind of central like fiction piece that it is, but it definitely, you can see the hallmarks and you can see the attitudes and style of kind of everyone as the districts roll on through the larger document.
And that was important. It was important to give them their own, each district its own voice through the writers.
Yes.
Partly because that way their strengths as writers come out.
Mm-hmm.
But also because it would have taken another half a year for me to rebang everybody's writing into a single authorial tone. And I'm so glad I didn't have to do that.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
It definitely hit the thing of being multiple journalists, talking about their specific district, what few good things there are, and hey, don't go down this street, or just don't come here.
Yeah, it's just maybe don't if you have the choice not to. Yeah.
Rancho. I had hopes that Rancho may have been a little lighter, but
yeah. It's the district that ends up becoming Dogtown. It was never going to be a happy story. Let's be honest.
Rancho Coronado absolutely is the one that evolved the most from its core rulebook representation. Absolutely.
I love how much of a tragedy the writer puts into some parts of Rancho, but it's just like, man, I want to send my players here.
So I know, because I know, Diamond, you had some like specific questions in here about some of the storylines and like character lines that kind of get brought up. Because obviously, Jay, I know we've talked about, you've mentioned before, maybe some in here on Wireheads, other times just in the Discord, like there is a loose timeline-ish continuity that you have for some of these events as they go on. And so the question I want to ask, I think that is a little more high level before we zoom into some of these like story-based ones, is as you're developing those stories, kind of how do you work kind of chronologically from where these like pieces have come from? For example, like with Molly Anderson's story, where it starts in the Jumpstart kit, that's kind of the first parts of that story get written out, and like over time the chronology just kind of like pushes that as we move through 2045, or how do you kind of conceptualize those things that definitely have a beginning, a middle, and like I don't know that any of them have reached a conclusive end yet, but we've definitely had enough twists and turns in the middle part of that story so far to see like that there is a timeline here. So how do you conceive of that against the rest of the narrative?
I mean, we don't have a big old map on the wall with specific dates or anything like that. It's mostly as we write, we don't fear building on things we've written before.
Okay.
And sometimes we have thoughts as to where things will go. Sometimes those thoughts, some of those thoughts will get built into products. Other thoughts will remain thoughts we'll have forever because for one reason or another, the place where we would represent, like, say I think a character is going to do X, but if we never have a place to have that character do X, we won't write it. If the opportunity arises, we'll use it. So that is there, but it's very loose.
Right.
It happens when and where there's chances to do so, and we don't invent product to tell a story. We tell stories in the products as the chance comes up.
Sure. Yeah.
I suppose, like, you know, on that question, a couple of things that I had just spotted and
hit me with it.
Oh, okay. Don't worry about it.
Lightning round.
I figured this is just going to be kind of like one of those that's just like it exists somewhere and that's fine. Something I noticed was the captain that like I use it a lot in my setting is the captain's cup. From the 6th Street. It's in Coldfire's background, and I don't see it pop up anywhere else in Haywood. And
Give me a second.
The document.
Give me a second. It is not there by name. You are correct.
Yeah, this is not a gotcha. This is just like, was there just like a decision for like some locations to just be like, eh?
I mean, there was just that one. I will admit, probably fell through the cracks in the name and its name. If you go to the armory on page 248, you will find that it does mention that there is a canteen. That canteen is the captain's blah. That we just didn't give it the name. Give a name there. Yeah, anything's there. I forgot to put in the name, and
all right,
that happened.
Yeah, fair enough.
So yeah, there's probably a location or two that were there that did not make it in. We have the tradition of that in 2020. There's plenty of locations that were never in the Night City source book because and there will probably be locations that won't ever make it in because at some point or another we're going to need a location. We're going to make up an adventure or something. We're going to need a location in Night City that doesn't exist, and then we'll have to make it. And we'll try to avoid it, but it's going to happen.
Sure.
I mean, like, it was even stated, like, in the book that this is, like, just during or just after the events of Hope Reborn, and so probably everything that comes after it'll just be, like, you know, throw a pin on the map down the road on your BT.
We'll try. One of the guiding principles we did put out for the writers, I gave them a whole bunch of, you know, here's your do's and don'ts. One of them was, don't invent a faction unless you feel it's absolutely necessary, and check with me beforehand. Obviously, they're going to invent locations, but so there's some plenty of new factions in this book. But 9 times out of 10, or don't invent a character unless you feel that's necessary. Check first to see if this thing exists already. You can use what we have. So. Yep. For example, that's why we don't have like 5 anime gangs. Not that everyone's inventing anime gangs, but you can say, well, the Moa Set gang is different from the Dragon Ball gang and stuff.
There's a Dragon Ball gang?
No, I'm just saying. The reason why there isn't is because we worked hard to consolidate, and in the future we will work hard to use the resources we have, and only introduce when we absolutely have to introduce. So that way, this book remains as complete as possible.
Well, and Dragon Ball is old enough that they'd probably be a sub-faction within the Primetime players, if anything. Like,
that's always a possibility.
It's always a possibility that you have Goku joining up with Spock in the middle of some conflict. It'd be the most chaotic mashup is possible thanks to that gang.
I was just figuring, like, also like in Street Stories, they're not going to mention, the warehouse that blows up,
Yeah.
Right.
like stuff
No,
like
yeah.
that.
The warehouse where you go to meet the Senate sisters actually is in there. It's Warehouse 13, I believe. But yes, not everything. But like Hard Hat's warehouse from Staying Vigilant isn't in this book because it's just a random warehouse on the edge of the. Spoilers. Sorry. But yeah, it's just a random warehouse that's on the edge of the hot zone.
Yeah, makes sense.
But yeah, and then the other question alongside that, which yes, I know Molly is getting mentioned once again. I had noticed like a couple of examples, some changes in the fictions. One of the big ones is the Andersons going from like one block in the old combat zone where Molly is, runs their night market to popping up over Pacifica Playground, which I imagine that's because of Patrick.
Yes.
But
so
like,
I will let
other
James.
Changes made for...
There probably were, and I don't know what they are off the top of my head. I will say the some of the reasons behind this I will leave to James to describe down the road. But I will say that Molly's night market is still in the old combat zone. She doesn't run a night market in Playland by the Sea. She hangs out at Playland by the Sea because her boyfriend's there. But that is not where the Andersons sleep at night.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, no, that's we'll have to put a pin in that for James then. That definitely has to happen.
I know you wanted to ask this question because we keep bugging Jay about it.
Oh yeah. So because I believe at least one of the last two times, it might have been both of them.
Last time.
There was a question that we had back then about lawmen and their backup ability, the fact that it's inconsistent. Obviously, one of the things we've just gotten in Night City 2045 is a very dynamic, sometimes by location, mostly by district, response to trouble. When like guns come out, bullets start flying, how likely is it that help arrives? So now we were kind of curious because this is actually something that I could very well see my players being like, but GM, about them being a member of the security force that occupies that district or provides security for that district, right? And their backup should therefore be more reliable because the threat rating is higher than their backup score is. So I was curious, number one, was in part this intended to kind of address some of that inconsistency, which I know has been a criticism that not just us, but the community at large has kind of levied against lawmen in the past. But also, two, what would you say to someone kind of petitioning you at your table with that question?
Okay, so, no. Weren't even thinking about the lawmen when we wrote this.
I figured.
This is the lawman's backup ability is a character ability. It's an ability of a character to actively call in for backup. And that has nothing to do with shots fired in an area. It has everything to do with can you convince your faction to send help. That is all about you, and it's nothing to do with the district's response time. The district's security codes are a GM tool the GM can use or not use at their discretion to decide if something triggers a security response. And whether that is simply I'm walking through a very secure area looking like I'm about to go to war, or it's I just blew the door off something and someone heard inside the building and called 911, or anything in between. That's the GM's call. Now, the GM can decide, absolutely, I'm sending someone in, or roll it. The GM's always had that discretion. Say, hey, guys, you just blew up a building. The cops are going to come.
Yeah.
The difference between the two is if you call the cops are there to back you up. If the GM calls the cops using the security code, the cops are there to respond to the incident. And if you are causing trouble,
You're part of it.
You may not be the person they were there to help.
You're the incident, in other words.
You might be the incident, yes. So it's the difference between saying, okay, I'll give you an example, the real world example. If I am if a cop is at a corner store and the corner store is being robbed, the cop calls in help the cop. If the cop is robbing the place, the cops may come in and they're not going to care that he's a cop. Hopefully.
Right.
They're going to deal with him as if he were a robber. So that's it. So yes, that's the difference between the two. Whether the cops are responding to your cry for help or whether they're responding to general mayhem. And in general mayhem, if you're edge running with your uniform on,
what are you doing?
What are you doing?
Fair.
Yeah, there's a difference in the quality in the tenor of the response.
Sure. Yeah. And one because Diamond and I were going back and forth last night, kind of going over the questions and figuring out like, okay, how do we want to ask certain things? And one of the explanations that kind of occurred in my head that I'd probably rationalize with this one was like, well, in the case of backup, the call is coming from inside the house and you are beholden to that house's rules. If they think you're too like low on the totem pole to send help to, then you're just too low on the totem pole. It doesn't matter what the security rating looks like for you. So you're calling from inside the house. If someone down the street, though, is saying, yeah, some guy with a rocket launcher just came in and leveled the building next door, that's probably going to make the news. They have every incentive to go and deal with that if you're in a green zone kind of thing.
And both things can be true simultaneously.
Yes.
You can call in and say, I need backup. I'm blah, 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 blah. And they say, oh, sorry, we can't send anyone to your location because all our cops are responding to an incident in progress. It turns out you're the incident in progress.
That's even better, honestly.
So both things are possibly true.
Yeah. No, definitely. And that's something that I'm like, it's such an interesting, it's an interesting, more nuanced version of, I think, the kind of 3 color system that we had previously in like the core rulebook. Because I felt like that definitely left something to be desired for the margins. Like the yellow zones in particular really felt like, okay, but what does that look like when we're talking about like, so the cops maybe aren't hovering super close, but they're gonna come in the event something important there gets hit. Whereas the red zones very much felt like, okay, cops probably aren't coming there unless it's absolutely necessary. They're going to stay the hell out of it. And this gives a little more of a, like, give us a barometer for like, okay, how intense is the desire not to go there if you're a security force, right?
And that was the idea. We wanted something that gave nuance and a lot of information at the same time. Didn't feel like you had to memorize a secret code of 20 abbreviation meanings ahead of time, which sometimes 2020 could feel that way.
Sure.
Basically, the idea being is you wouldn't have to reference a specific page every time. I say, oh yeah, no, heavy NCPD. I have a decent idea of what heavy NCPD looks like, and so I can just pull that out.
Right. Well, and obviously you guys did a good job too in instances of like needing to include a security force. Typically, we at the very least have some kind of like a MOOC stat block near the end of the chapter for that location or that district to like pull in and to say like, here's the prototypical foot troop of that faction if you need one.
Yeah, and that was part of the point in putting in, they're almost all MOOCs. All the stat blocks are MOOCs because it's a lot easier to scale a MOOC block up than to scale another kind of block down. Because MOOC block, add if I really need it real quick, I could add combat, 2 combat number and give them a slightly better set of armor and maybe a better quality gun.
Right.
Moving from a poor quality to a regular standard quality pistol. And there you go. That's something you can do pretty quickly in your head.
Yeah, fast. Anything that you can do that kind of fast and dirty mod to is like, it's always kind of the better way to do it. because that's always the trap I tend to fall into at my tables, is like I like having not detailed in the sense that I need it not to be a combat number, but like you want it to feel organic, like it belongs in the district. And to now, we really haven't had too much of that. We kind of got a little of that in Danger Call Dossier, but even then it was like pretty narrow banded to like these factions that we represent in the book are the stats you're getting, the flavor you're getting. Here and Everyday People have kind of filled the margins for a lot of that now, where it's like, if it's the faction you need, it's here. If it's not, look at Everyday People and scale it as appropriate, kind of thing.
Yeah. And that was important. When I was putting together the book, it was a choice of whether I wanted to try to put in some stat blocks for some, and I couldn't do them all, of the personas at the end of each district chapter, or whether I wanted to put in average archetypes of faction members. And in the end, I decided that finding, you're more likely in play to have as a GM to run, you go to Little China, and you're more likely to need a stat block for a Gold Dragon Mook than you are for any one specific person that they're going to encounter for the most part, because you may not use them, but you're very likely to use the Gold Dragons at some point if you're running in Little China long enough.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, no, and I still think you guys have done good, because I think the first time I saw this style of like making a character and giving them an identity was in the crossover you guys did with Mixing Drinks, Changing Lives, when you did the crossover with Valhalla, where you will put a name down and then identify like this is their role and the rank of that role, but give like almost nothing else beyond those few facts and like a basic synopsis of like, here's the kind of person they are and kind of what they're capable of in looser terms than game rules. And then basically leave it in the GM's hands, like, this is your template, figure it out from here kind of thing. Because even within like the district managers, you see evidence of that here.
Yeah, sadly, I did not have 100 more pages to write stat blocks for everybody, but I think that it's tougher, I'll admit, when you're a newer GM, but once you're comfortable GMing for a while, you can sit and go, okay, well, this guy's a Fixer 5, and I see he's more into dealing drugs than he is for something else, so he probably doesn't have a high, forgery. So I know that if they're going to this person for forging, whereas he may, trading, I can figure that out, or they're going to have a high streetwise, because drug dealers tend to have a high streetwise, whereas a fixer who specializes in buying for a store will have a lower streetwise, that kind of thing. That's something you can come up with fairly quickly based on a few sentences of information and a rough rank, I think.
Yeah, I agree, and that's why I think that's a pretty elegant solution to fixing that problem without needing to write whole stat blocks. Although, I'm just going to throw it out there now, there's always Night City 2045 Plus if you do want to.
No, not. There will not be stat blocks for the several hundred NPCs.
The guy can dream.
Free DLC.
Following here, John the Wise reached out on a post.
Hey, John.
Reddit. Yeah, that was first thing he said. Was tell him I said hi. Thank you for the all the hard work. I love the book very much, and I feel the team did an excellent job. They did a good job of making a modern version of the 2020 source book while simultaneously listening to the needs of the community. Public transportation
means a lot coming from him.
Utility codes and security codes were so good. So his question: what was the biggest challenge when creating the source book? What was the philosophy? What was the philosophy of trying to pay homage to the original source book while doing something original and modern? So, what was the biggest challenge?
Yeah, just one though. Yeah.
The biggest challenge was anxiety. I've said this before, and I'll say it again. When you talk to people, Cyberpunk fans especially, but often other people who were gamers back in the day, they will often tell you that the Night City source book, the original Night City source book, was, it set a standard for how city books in general, but modern city books especially. The things that, because gazetteers were not absolutely new. D&D had done some really cool in-world gazetteers, and then Night City and around the same time, Seattle Sourcebook for Shadowrun came out, and they really set a tone for how good something like this could be. And to this day, Night City stands its test of time, as far as I'm concerned, as being the best thing that 2020 ever put out. So I had to
you guys even point back to it in the core book as like hey, if you need treasure ideas for the hot zone, here, look at this thing. So
and so now here I am, decades later, in charge of taking Mike's baby and dressing it up for the prom, and
it's fair,
and doing it, and I have to do the same thing, only different, which anybody who's ever worked on a beloved franchise will tell you, doing the same thing only different is hard. And so that was it. The anxiety that the book I made would come out and people go say, "Oh God, this is terrible. This is nothing. This is not enough like the 2020, or worse. This is too much like the original 2020 source book. Both terrible." So that was that. And then as for modernizing it, that was actually relatively easy because we already had a template established by Black Chrome, where we figured out that if the Chromebooks were a catalog, Black Chrome was an app. And in this case, it was two things. One, formatting wise, if 2020 was a data term book, which if you look at 2020, it's designed to be that you're reading it on a data term, then Night City 2045 is something you're reading on your agent. That was easy. The other trick was that 2020 was, technically speaking, officially, the content in 2020 is an in-universe book that's called Facts on File Guide to Night City. And it is a commercial travel book, which you were able to buy if you were visiting Night City as a tourist. Sometimes it doesn't read like that. It's kind of inconsistent a little bit in 2020 because there's stuff that are like, I wouldn't expect that, but I just assume Facts and File guys have a quirky sense of humor and are willing to say, hey, yeah, by the way, you can get drugs here. You can buy guns here. It's not something I would expect in a commercial book. I thought about that for a very long time. Was this going to be another one? And then I decided, with help from Mike, we decided that if 2020 was about a corporate, rigid world where everything was controlled and the media has full control, and 2045 is a time when bit players, small players, can make a name for themselves. Pop media is a thing, right? The Garden has opened up accessibility, and not everybody is getting their news from Net54 and WNS DMS. Then this book should be not a commercial product in the traditional sense, like I go to the bookstore and I buy a travelogue, but a renegade one, a book specifically for outsiders, edgerunners, nomads. And so that came together. Once those two things clicked, that was it. That was the book. And we knew we had it.
Yeah, no, and I would say, just as like someone on the outside who's seeing the finished product for what it is, I would say you guys have done a really good job of differentiating this from the original 2020 source book and giving it like all the attitude of the Red. The Red feels like the scrappy cousin of the refined, like you said, kind of corporate sterilized world that 2020 books so often kind of devolve into, unless they're like written very specifically from the perspective of like, let me tell you how it is in the underground, kid. Like, if it's written from that perspective, it takes that. Anything beyond that is very sterilized, like by the corporation or the media.
There were hints of punk in the 2020 book. And it was the hints of there are great. And this one, we wanted more of that. We wanted it to be, and we wanted it to be biased. We didn't actually want it, we wanted to feel like, and Trace says at the beginning of the book, says, don't take it at face value, don't believe what you're being told.
Right.
And we wanted to be biased. We wanted these people to have their own biases throughout the book as they write. Because if you're punk and you don't have an opinion, are you really punk?
Right. No, because then what are you fighting for if you don't have an opinion as a
exactly.
punk? Like, yeah. You just end up like someone Johnny would, you'd be criticized by Johnny in the 2070s for that.
But that was it. Once the concept of it's something written by independent medias telling a street level story of Night City that you can read on your app. Once those sentences came together, the rest of the book followed.
And it was delivered really well with, because like when I would open up each chapter, it did sound like you were listening to somebody else each time. Like, even if it was the same author in a couple different chapters, the voices, like whoever was the media in question, the voice was different, and it was very well executed on that portion.
Yeah.
Now, speaking of people writing about things,
yes.
How about Thompson for starts? Thompson. I don't believe it's the Thompson in question, but it's probably someone using the handles, sort of like how Rocker Boys use Rocker Boy from Rocker Boy Manson. In that sense,
so Thompson in this case wrote the person who wrote the NorCal military base wrote it under the handle Thompson, and we've said it in a couple of places now. We said it in the core rulebook, I believe, somewhere, and then we say it again in. A screen sheet generator when we have a list of there's a sidebar with a list of medias that have written screen sheets. Thompson is a moniker. It's that some medias will sometimes take when they want to publish something, but they don't want the name attached to it, usually for fear of retaliation. It's a version of anonymous. It's like Alan Smithy, if you're familiar with the movie, where like a director makes a movie and it's terrible and they don't want their name attached to it. They petition to have the name Alan Smithy attached to it. They don't do that anymore. Yeah. So yeah, Thompson is just, they're saying, okay, Thompson is a fairly legendary media who was involved in some major things, major events, and so part of it's a tribute and taking his name to get the word out without putting yourself in harm's way.
So when you were putting together NorCal military base, some of the veterans that play at my table, I've had folks from the Army, Marines, Air Force come down, and they were really impressed with how accurate some of the things were. To quote one of them, "Damn, the more things change, the more they stay the same, even in my Cyberpunk game." What kind of research did you do while developing the base?
Okay, so I want to preface this to say that I personally wrote that section. I wrote two. I'm responsible for 3 sections of the books. The facts section, which I wrote with Mike, in which basically what happened was Mike and I had a lot of conversations, and I took notes, and then I turned that into with some of my own thoughts into the facts section. I wrote the NorCal military base, and I wrote the outskirts. The NorCal military. So I grew up in an army town. I grew up next to a place called Fort Devens. If you ever watched the original Dirty Dozen, it takes place partially there, and it was Camp Devens at the time, but there. And while I am not an army brat, I spent a fair amount of time on the base, and I went to school. My high school was the school in which kids from the base went to school, and so as a result, I have a lot of learning through osmosis as to how a military base, at least from a civilian point of view, is put together. And so, yeah, I can't talk much about the firing ranges because I was never there, but I was at the PX, and I knew where the rec center was, and I was at the parade ground where they also had the concerts and did the 4th of July fireworks. And then from there, I took what I remembered from my childhood, and I just looked. And what I actually did is I scoured maps of military bases.
Okay.
The neat thing is military bases are maps, and on the maps they tell you what the buildings are, because you got to be able to get around them. And so I looked at it and I was like, okay, what is, and then then I did a little research is what's off the map. So they're not going to tell you where they. For example, I think I mentioned in the writing we're not going to tell you where we store our Chu-2, because that's a priority target.
Right.
But we're gonna yeah, exactly. But you're gonna know these things, and so from there it's a little bit, and then I just stitched it all together. So basically, I just remembered my childhood and I paid attention to how military bases, because the great thing is, for the most part, especially in the modern era, military bases are structured all similarly. There's a certain modularity to them. Most military bases have a PX, a post exchange. Most military bases with residents on the base will have this. The commander always has the nicest house on the base. And so I was able to put that together and to create the thing. It is thrilling. I am so happy because this is a case where if I could have actually hired a veteran to write this section. Both Chris Spivey and Graham are veterans, and I could have had them. And I actually did ask them to look it over and say,
that's so cool.
Are the right things there? But I felt that because the role of the military has been so undefined so far in the time of the Red, it was important that someone inside the company write it, because there's just too much nuance and connections to the outside world and history and information that just doesn't exist anymore. That literally needed to be invented as we were writing it. That it was important that it was given assigned to me. So it means a lot to me that people who have actually lived on military bases feel that it actually works as a military base.
Most of my vets are just like, did the person who write this, are they, full of that? But okay, I was expecting something wild, like, I got a tour of a base or something like that.
No, I mean, I've been on a base. It's like the base Devon's. I used to go. I was a theater kid, and Devon's had a amateur theater where we would go there. It was in a building built by World War II prisoners of war.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Old, gorgeous brick building made by German and Italian POWs. Is rather amazing. I remember the first time I went to the office of the guy that ran it, and I was like, "Why is there a picture of the president on your wall?" He said, "There's a picture of the president in every officer's wall in every office on this base." And I was like, "Huh, I didn't know that," and I learned something.
No, that's incredible. I know. So obviously, there's the other kind of thing that we know you had a hand in, and you just said, was the outskirts. So,
yes.
The outskirts is obviously probably one of the most kind of hard to define locales within the city, because it doesn't, unlike the other areas, have really firm borders. It just kind of exists as this amorphous blob that encases the city and kind of bleeds into the margins of it. So when you were kind of going through the development and conceptualization phase of that outskirts area and kind of the things you wanted to showcase within it, what kinds of environments or locales did you either research or really want to capture in that concept phase? And then as you kind of moved through that from concept to product phase at the end here, what did you use to kind of help you narrow down your vision of those locales and things from where you started them?
So the outskirts was assigned to me by myself. I assigned the outskirts to myself as a matter of practicality, much like the NorCal base, but for different reasons. When I started working on the core document, one of the things I did was I went through the 2020 Night City book, and I marked down everything I thought would move forward to 2045. Then I went into 2077. Shout out to the team at the Cyberpunk Wiki, the Fandom Wiki, as well as the writers of the big old hint guide and the World of Night City, World of Cyberpunk. And then, so basically, I went through 2077's many locations and said, okay, what from 2077 exists in 2045? And A lot of them, the majority of them actually are in the outskirts, as it turned out. Perhaps because the outskirts is full of many abandoned things. Abandoned things by their very nature are old. A lot of the stuff that is in the outskirts from 2077, the Badlands of 2077, existed in 2045. As a result, I looked at it and said, okay, I can assign this to a writer, and then that writer, for a good half, if not 2/3 of the thing, will have to send a question to me, and then I'll send a question to CDPR, and I'll take the question back, and I'll send it. Or I could do it myself and talk directly to Patrick Mills over at CDPR, which is what I did. So that's the first thing, is I decided, okay, I know the spaceport's being built, and that's in the outskirts. I know the motel is there, and that's, that the obviously older of the two motels that you can find in the Badlands of 2077, that's there. I know the mine that the Wraiths are hanging out in is there. I know the solar farm is there. And then once I had that, I was like, okay, well, what else is missing? Some things were like, where does Militech practice artillery? They're not going to do it in the city, so they must have a range out there. So that, well, if that mine exists, what else exists? And then I dug in more into Corp Bud, Pole Bud, which would eventually become Corp Bud in 2077. And I talked to Patrick about it. I said, tell me about Corp Bud. He said, well, it was Pole Bud originally when it was first founded, and it was founded by two Polish-American people living in Southern California. And I got the history, and I was like, oh, they're going to have a town, and they're going to get this, and like there's a factory in there as well in 2077. That's there. And then I was like, well, there's a town, but if you go to the town, the abandoned town as it exists in 2077, you realize that's relatively new. So I decided that there was a town in the same location before then, when it was a company town run by Pole Bud. So there was a lot of there was no overarching vision. The nice thing about the outskirts is because the outskirts is everything that's outside of Night City in the immediate area. It could be a hodgepodge of things. Laguna Bend obviously going to be there, and then again I went to CDPR and I said, okay, we've got the church, we've got the gas station, we've got the school. We know there's a school. We know, these locations absolutely exist in Laguna Bend. And like, does the church have a name? They said, yeah, we never named it, but I think it's this. And I'm like, cool, the church now has a name. And so, do you mind if we name, the diner? And they said, no, we don't mind if you name the diner. They said, do you mind if we put a store in the gas station because these people are buying their groceries somewhere? And they said, no, we don't mind if you put a store in the gas station. And then little things. A lot of times it was just neat. If the NorCal Marshals out there, the NorCal Marshals need a staging ground.
Sure.
If we say that you can call the sheriff needs a staging ground.
Yeah.
So basically, it was just putting in the things that made sense. And then, of course, I didn't go overboard because I was restricted by word count. I can only put in so much. So I focused on the things that I felt provided opportunity.
Right.
Either the opportunity of resources like the sheriff station, the NorCal Marshal station, opportunity of plot, or downtime, like the motel is a good place to stay.
Sure.
The nomad camps and the rapid shifts camps need to be mentioned, and then the Militech, artillery base, the railroads. They're all places that make sense as a good place that you come across. The farms come from 2077, but we were able to define that the poppy farms actually grew poppies. And that was great.
When I saw poppies, it was just like, really? Opioids.
Yeah. Well, we say that in 2020, we've said in 2020 that most of the poppy populations in the world was destroyed by the nebulous virus, and that the Golden Triangle pirate people crime lords were inventing a new strain. And of course, eventually biogenicals could get their hands on that, and they're going to say, oh, well, as good as synthetic opioids are, maybe we can grow even better natural opioids. Because after all, just look at the real world. How much has pot as marijuana gotten stronger and stronger, as we've gotten into like not just I'm growing this under a tarp in a field,
right?
Keep it from the cops,
but industrialize it,
cultivating.
Yep.
So, where it matters, where you have real local competition, which means you've got to have the best, strongest weed possible,
right?
That kind of thing. So the outskirts in the end ended up being a cool hodgepodge of places that either had to be there, essentially one way or another.
Yeah, no, and that makes perfect sense, and it is. I thought that you might because it is probably the spot that touches most heavily on the world as it was and is to come on either end of the timeline when we talk about where the red sits in the middle there. So it makes sense that for expedition's sake, you'd probably take it just so that, again, there isn't that like horrible back and forth where it's like, let's reaffirm what we know about the world to come in 2077. So within the book, because this kind of falls under some of the denizens of the outskirts, and I know you mentioned obviously the Raffins, the Aldecaldos are there and stay there through, they're probably the two groups that are probably best defined both in the time of the Red and in the 2070s, where most people are kind of coming to this from. So there are nods, though, some of them that get more fleshed out than a simple nod to the other kind of nomad groups that visit Night City and work in and around the city. The most like fleshed of those lesser kind of defined ones would be like the Thelis, namely with like the Thelis Marines that we see. So being that nomads are identified as such a critical and important part of the larger fabric of society within the time of the Red, pretty much the world over, what is kind of what was the thinking, I guess, about how much screen time, so to speak, you gave them within the book? And were there at any point plans to expand a little further into some of the nomad culture of some of these various groups that some of them we only see kind of nods to, kind of like we see a little bit about the Jodes, but more of that is like, okay, this happened and they were there. We see nods to Thelis, and basically right now we still have to go back to like neo-tribes to look at a lot of this really high definition stuff. So was there ever a plan to add more definition to that within this book, or was that never really part of the thought process there?
It was never part of the thought process because this isn't the book for it. Unfortunately,
sure.
we can't go by here's a page on each nomad nation. Unfortunately, though information from in Rush Chrome, we're going to talk about more about that, and that never got past the note stage. Though lots of notes from that ended up in this book. So in this case, yes, technically speaking, Neo-Tribes is still the best piece of information, and that book is still available on Drive-Thru-RPG in both print on demand and PDF format. I highly recommend it, and eventually we will have better listings for nomad nations in 24/5 and Red 2. That is something we absolutely do. I'm not sure what product it'll be in, but it will be in a product. In this case, obviously, the Aldecados, they've always been the biggest nomad nation from 2020 onward. And so, we talk about the Aldecado camp, and we give a decent amount of information about the camp in terms of location. We talk about the Jodes and the kind of split between the Jodes and the Aldecados that resulted in that. The Thelis ended up actually being really important because they run the port. And so there's a fair amount of flavor for them, if nothing else.
Sure.
Both in terms of what they do operationally. You get an idea. They structure themselves in fleets. If you read between the lines, they talk about Calypso is the equivalent of a fleet admiral, for example. Chen, the media who covers the port of Night City, introduces himself by his station. He is a radio operator. If you look at the art for the port of Night City, you will see that there is graffiti in both Russian and Greek, because the Thelis have strong Greek roots. So there's little hints here and there.
I wondered why the marine symbol was within a theta. That makes sense. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. So there's like, and then we looked at other things. You'll see, we built up on this. The Snake Nation was always this really nebulous thing. The snakes, just everybody else, and we felt that all the nomads are finding the niches in the time of the Red, and that's not to say that every snake does railroads,
right?
But they found a niche in running the railroads, and so we mentioned that here and there. Whenever we mention railroads as opposed to end cards, whenever we mention specifically railroads. Chances are we're also mentioning snake nomads.
Got it.
And the folk nation, that they have absorbed a lot of the air nations, and which is why they run the airport out in the Badlands. So you see, and then there is a Blood Nation circus in Watson. So we give examples of where those nations' overall niche lies within this book, but we don't decide and say, and the Jodes are this, and they have these families, and they're led by this person, and here's their history. But we do give what we hope is enough flavor to get an idea of what they're like.
Right. No, and there certainly is that. Kind of piggybacking off of that, actually, there were two nomads that Diamond pointed out to me were mentioned within the kind of the ocean travel section near the front of the book.
Yes.
The Daringen and the Viri, if I'm pronouncing those right.
I've never heard either of those words spoken aloud. So,
okay.
Yes.
We're gonna hope my American isn't so bad on that then. So
I apologize to anyone who actually understands what those words sound like and that we've said them incorrect.
Yeah. So those two packs. So obviously the only real context we've ever had for nomads is within the broader context of more or less North America within like the 2020 book. There's some mentions
and the UK.
And the UK, yeah, that's true.
They get a decent amount of page of ink in Rough Guide to the UK. But
Sure.
You're right. We don't really get a lot about nomads in the rest of the world. And so, yes, they exist. We do mention actually in the core rulebook that Zarafa deals with Russian nomads. And we hint that the Russian nomads have ties to Russian organized crime in that entry for Zarafa. And so for 2045, I had to define, at least give them a name.
Sure.
And so we did. And then I was like, oh, well, we say in Watson, especially in Kabuki, that goods are coming from China, from Japan, from Korea, from East Asia, and Southeast Asia. And they're getting here somehow. So, yes, the Dayless are going over, but they're going to have their own people, too. And so I looked at... we looked at boat cultures. Actually, I didn't even look at Packroom. Packroom doesn't have enough to work with there. Okay. So I looked at real-world boat cultures from the region, and kind of came up with a very basic idea, a name, and a rough idea of who they're working with. And I didn't go beyond that because I am not an expert enough to define it in. I didn't need to for the context of this book.
Sure.
That is something that requires a lot of help with an expert to develop, and that's something I'm going to do there.
Okay. Gotcha. Because, I just saw those, and I was like, wait a minute, I've never seen those before. And obviously, I'm not, like, a scholar on everything cyberpunk from the 2020 era. So, like, for me, I'm like, maybe I just don't know about these things being mentioned back then. But, yeah, okay, that makes a little more sense. So there are some of these organized crime groups that are getting names finally. The more Asian nomads are an extension of the boat cultures of Southeast Asia. Gotcha. Okay.
Pushing out, move from being just rivers to bull and the ocean. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. No, and that makes sense. So I guess kind of pushing on then. So obviously between Solo Fortune 2045, its related DLC, and now in Night City 2045 to a albeit limited more to where it ties into Night City culture extent, there are several kind of nods and pointers at the world beyond the city.
Yes.
And there's obviously, even in the core rulebook, there are places like the Deep Downs. There's mentions of the High Riders. So both below the sea and above the sky, there are things that exist out there. So I'm just kind of curious, what would you be willing to share with us, I guess, about some of those things that exist just beyond Night City and the Pacifica Confed, as those other groups kind of touch Night City and we're starting to see more little grabs at like what could be out there, like what kind of exists beyond the edge.
So my apologies to the person who asked this question.
It's
nothing.
me. Okay.
I do apologize.
Yeah,
for one basic reason, what I have learned watching Mike and do interviews over the last 8 years or so is that the minute one of us says something in something like an interview, or it becomes gospel, and it bounces, it develops a life of its own, and it becomes, even if I say, it's like, this isn't canon, but blah.
Right.
Here's where I'm thinking. The parts of it, the prefix gets knocked off, and it gets bounced around the community. So until we have something that feels more tied down, it is not something I'm willing to say now, because anything I say is super subject to change.
Sure. Yeah. No, I know this is the deep heart of me is like Deep Space 2045 one, but that's a different, very niche desire that I'm probably not alone in feeling, but
haven't gone up to Portland for cleanup crew. It was kind of our first taste of getting out there.
Yeah,
but it would be kind of cool to see what does the Confed look like down the road. But
yeah,
we kind of see a little bit of it in the 70s, like what goes on, but oh well.
And you see, Hanson, you're right. But for one thing, you can see a list of cities that trains in the Aerozones travel to.
Yeah, no,
those were very specifically picked.
Yeah. Oh boy. All right. Well, there we go.
No,
okay.
They were picked because we knew that as we worked out the trail, there are some cities we thought would no longer exist, or were said to not exist in 2020, and we didn't want to say, oh no, suddenly they exist.
Suddenly, that it makes sense both for continuity's sake, but that is because I know like we've obviously seen glimpses too through like the eyes of seeing double and stuff like that, some of the international relations stuff. So like it'll be interesting as we I guess get more of those little glimpses into the beyond.
With the train lines though, were you looking at like what you like Union Pacific's maps, or
I was looking at some real train lines in the real world, but also looking at the train lines we established in Home of the Brave and and the 2020 supplements, and then just riffing from there.
Yeah. So the next thing that I'm gonna touch into, just because this was something I told Diamond, I'm like, it would be wrong of me not to ask if we're. Our podcast name is Wireheads. Diamond is literally a Netrunner VTuber. I am very much involved on the net side of things. I really like the net in Cyberpunk as a Wild West of sorts. And given that while there were touches where contextually appropriate on the state of the net in the 2040s within Night City 2045, the most glaring, in my opinion, of which is very much you access the old net, that's a year of hard labor, buddy. Hope you're ready to serve. So with the regard to, obviously Netwatch is kind of the omniscient boogeyman a lot of the time in those circles for the people who would want to go in there. And obviously there's like a trope.
They're not any better than any other intelligence agency.
Right, but to those people, they are the phantom waiting in the wings, right? Be just your luck you dive in, right? And they're right there. So when evaluating, because obviously the old net is much broader than the air gap networks of Red, and we got security codes for physical locations. Would you say that because NetWatch is just more physical policing, that they still are kind of constrained by the physical security codes? Or would old net potentially have more surveillance on it?
I mean, in theory, there might be some NetWatch guys in the old net, but probably not many. Back in 2020, they were literally there. They people that were just always in there and were always able to chase you, and that's not something. They have the same problems with the old net that we do, and so they are much more physical security force. NetWatch, the security around an old net access point is going to depend entirely on what's around the old net access point. Is it Dark Zone 1? Is there an old net access point there? Is there one in the Canadian consulate, like we hint? Is there one in a corporate center? Is there one in the middle of the ruins of the hot zone? If NetWatch knows about it, there's a decent chance they are at least maybe they have some cameras there. Maybe they have agents stationed there. If NetWatch does know about it, they're not going to do anything about it until they may be looking for it. Maybe it's a race to get to it before they do. So the answer is the security around old net access points is entirely dependent on what you need for your plan.
Yeah. Okay. That I was just curious about that because I'm like that the old net, and because this is where I'm excited to see as things develop for the 2070s in particular. I'm really excited to see how the regional networks kind of broaden to include that old school net running in the new world kind of thing, because we know that evolution does come at a certain point there. So that is that's just fascinating to me. Okay, very cool. So anyway, Diamond, I've said enough questions.
All right. I had to go back and look at the Canadian consulate because I'm like, I'm sorry, what?
Yeah, there's Jay just dropping facts before your very eyes.
It's in there if you look.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I went double check. Like, well, damn. So we do have some questions from the viewers. Some of these actually kind of line up with some questions I've had, but I will ask them from the viewers. So this one's from Culture Nerd. Why did our Tal decide for Night City 2045 for the Judge and probably in extension John Good and Mary Lou Ellerby to be an AI when the whole setting of Cyberpunk has a very anti-AI tone baked into it? It just boggles my head that NetWatch would allow the NCPD to trust one to do that after the data crash and Rabbids as well.
Okay, so the NCPD has nothing to do with the Judge.
Yeah.
The cops don't run courts.
Yep.
That is a decision based on the Night City Council, probably prompted by Night Court. The long and short story is NetWatch is absolutely powerful. It is a powerful security service. It has jurisdiction. It has control over things. Access to the old net is absolutely illegal, and unless you have enough power and you're doing it, who's going to tell Militech no? So yes, and NetWatch absolutely is nervous. That is why whenever you get to a location that has one of these AIs, like the Hall of Justice or the Eurobank building or Net 54's headquarters, we specifically say NetWatch is either there or they're really concerned about it. At the same time, NetWatch only has so much power. NetWatch is not omnipotent. NetWatch is like, okay, if the city government wants something, or the state, the state government or the federal government wants something, NetWatch is not going to be able to say no. And in the case of the Judge, the government has decided that a AI running their courts is more efficient. It can process all its cases quickly. And by the way, it makes a lot of money off those cases.
Wait, the Judge makes money?
Sure, judgments.
No, the city makes money.
Oh,
yeah.
The city makes money. The city makes money by collecting fees. The city makes money by selling tickets to the floggings and executions. The city makes money by hiring out the people that they don't send, that they imprison locally, as labor force. So the city makes money, and they make more money if more people are processed. And that processing happens faster if law is turned from days of arguing and questioning to a series of essentially spreadsheet filling out and data entry, which is what the justice system is. So NetWatch is nervous, but NetWatch can't say, no, you can never use an AI, because NetWatch doesn't have control over local laws like that. NetWatch can say, hey, if this AI is threatening public security, we will absolutely step in and shut it down, which it will. As for have people forgotten? Yes, people have forgotten. Look at the real world. Do you think people don't have, like, there are kids today who have no idea what happened on 9/11?
Yep.
How many years after polio did it take before people started saying, I don't want polio vaccines, those cause autism? So yes, people will forget. A lot of people who are alive today barely remember, or it's been so long, or they're greedy, and that happens.
Well, so, the general populace is also walking around with AIs in their pockets and their agents. So,
yes, also they are not true AIs, but yes, everybody is conditioned to think, hey, your personal best friend is useful. They all have it. Now I will say that the judge has no access outside its server. The judge is self-contained. John Good is self-contained. Mary Lou Ellaby, not. And honestly, Mary Lou terrifies the shit out of NetWatch, but NetWatch can't. Net54 is powerful enough that NetWatch can't fight back against it to the degree where they say, okay, no, you can't. Also, Mary Lou was in Live and Direct, and her story was so cool that I absolutely had to continue it into 2045. She has one of the best character arcs in 2020.
Okay, so she is a 2020 character. Where did they come up with the name Mary Lou Ellerby? I feel like that
I got no idea. They obviously wanted to go for like a healthy, corn-fed Midwestern girl kind of name.
I feel
personally attacked as someone who came from that same region.
Mary Lou was actually a name that I was test running for a time. Okay.
Yeah.
We're moving on to John Good.
Yeah.
I want you to understand. I've got a Pepe Sylvia board going on.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm missing. What is John Good's name from?
John the Good was the king of France who established the franc.
The currency. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
That makes sense.
John Good. Eurobank uses John Good. Again, Eurobank is too powerful for NetWatch to say no. And the amount of currency minted, the way that the currency is minted, both digitally and physically, has to be governed by an AI, or it will be, it is, or at least it's so much easier with an AI than it would be with people and expert systems, which is why it is. And again, John Good is self-contained. John Good has no access to the outside world. Neither John Good nor the judge have access even to the city net.
I doubt they're really probably interested in the affairs of the little people either.
Who knows? That's a good. That's up for GM to decide. That is out there for you to work with. But yes, yes. By the way, yes, the rich and powerful have access. Get to do things that you don't. Because you know what? They're rich and powerful and they want it.
It's fair.
So, does Mary Lou have, like, means to just get around the city then? Like, is she carried by somebody, or? I
imagine Mary Lou has a personal assistant who probably can carry her around. But it's the same question. Why does NetWatch let Delamain run a taxi service where he's out on the street and AI controlled cars, and cars are lethal weapons of mass destruction?
Right.
Man.
So the answer is NetWatch is not all powerful. NetWatch has limits to what it can and cannot do. If the city says we want it, then the city gets it. And network says okay, but we're going to watch it, and they go okay.
So
Hell, when
very good.
think about it this way: who shuts down when spoilers for 2027? But when Delamain's portal cores go amok and start wandering, driving over the city, causing problems, does Netwatch shut them down? No, V does. So Netwatch has limits.
Sure. I guess to kind of follow up on just something with John Good in particular here, and maybe this is because I've been really busy since this thing came out, so I've only gotten to read so much of this. Within the Eurobank section,
Tisk.
Yeah, I know, right? How does the minting of digital currency work if he doesn't have connection to a network then?
The information is fed to him. Basically, all the information on transactions. This is not actually mentioned in the book, so I don't believe.
Oh, good. Okay, that's why I'm like, please, if this is mentioned somewhere, don't crucify me.
A lot of nebulous hand waving here, but basically, information comes. The bank does monitor all information coming through the city net based on digital transactions. That information is fed into John Good. And John Good then uses that information to determine, okay, there's too much currency. But basically, imagine it's a lot like feeding a prisoner that's quarantined for a disease. You put it, the food goes into a slot, and the slot is closed, and then it's open on the other side and it's pulled out. There's a step. They are careful about it. They're not stupid.
Sure.
But yes, John Good does not have direct access to that data, which is, by the way, an interesting plot point. If you can manipulate the data, you can manipulate currency within Night City.
I thought the cough was just simply John, just like, all right, this amount of currency just gone.
Yeah, just gone.
No, yeah, no. John will say, like, eliminate these, the digital euro dollars with these specific serial numbers. The system will eliminate them, but yes.
Wow, imagine that, actually having $1 to your name digitally and then just, it's gone.
Yep, it's gone.
I think especially before, everyone has a bank account or like a way to acquire digital currency. But
everyone can have digital currency. A lot of people's digital currency comes in the form of chops, basically gift cards.
Yep.
So they're digital currency in a physical media, which can be used. And you just like you don't need a phone account to have a phone in the United States. You just need a prepaid phone card. You can essentially get a prepaid Eurobuck card. You pay with cash, and you have digital currency you can use to buy things.
And then you could load it or unload it as needed, kind of thing. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Interesting. Okay. So then the follow-up question I have, and this is going to get really, really in the weeds, and I apologize, but I'm curious now. Because when I first read Cyberpunk Red and I was running based on the Jumpstart kit, my assumptions at the time, because it wasn't really talked about, was that physical currency was probably far rarer because digital was easier to trace. How does that stand up in the Night City of 2045 that we understand today? Is physical and digital like both pretty readily available, or is there a bias toward digital?
There's probably a bias towards digital in general, but plenty of people have physical currency. There's enough physical currency, if only because it's more expensive to make physical currency, so digital currency is much easier to make. But I'm not going to get into specifics on percentages because it doesn't matter. The truth is it doesn't matter. Because what does it matter to your edge runner whether the currency supply is 50% digital, 60% digital, and 40% physical? Also because I don't want to constrict GMs to thinking, they can't give digital or physical currency because blah. Just give whatever makes sense for the job.
Right. It's mostly about, because like back then it was about how easily traceable is the money you're getting paid to do these illegal acts potentially, and like how that black market of it all works. And I believe there's like even a quest in the or a mission rather in the Jumpstart kit that talks about unmarked Eurodollars that you get handed for something, which is like
physical currency is always going to be easier to do without tracing than digital.
Sure.
But you can also assume that the physical currency may or may not have threads. Someday we may talk more about it. Maybe I'll do a DLC down the line. But for now, just assume it's as complicated or uncomplicated as you need it to be for your game.
Fair enough. Yeah, no, that's valid. That's one of my little nerdy hyperfixations about the setting. I'm like, I wonder. But yeah, anyway.
Next question from It's the Guck.
Okay.
For someone unfamiliar with 2045, but
Mm-hmm.
who may have dipped their toes in 2077 or 2020 cyberpunk lore, what are some of the most notable differences in the tone or power structure of Night City? I think we talked about it a little bit, but I suppose what do you got?
Okay. The power structure in 2020 and 2077 is more rigid. That is an important thing to know. There's a mayor, there's a city council. The city council, the corporations on the city council, there are 10 of them. They are the 10 highest taxpayers, I think is the way it works. The ones that pay the most in various taxes get to sit on the city council. That is true in 2020, and then when Arasaka comes back, it becomes true again because Arasaka wants as little competition as possible. It knows it cannot be the only corporate seat on the city council, but it wants to have as few things. And so it's in my head. I figure Arasaka says, okay, we're here. Let's go back to the old charter, or at least this part of the old charter. In 2045, there's no mayor because no one wants to risk a centralized power structure. Basically, no one wants one guy, because anybody who's the mayor can get bought. And once they're bought, that whoever buys them has the most power. So they would prefer to have no one's willing to trust anyone, and as a result, literally anyone who can afford a seat gets a seat. And so it is a bigger, more fractured government. Districts have much more independence in terms of what they're allowed to do. The city manager, in a way, it works more like an older New York than modern New York, in that the borough presidents used to have a lot of power because each borough was essentially its own city that came together in almost like an economic cooperative. And then over time, the mayors consolidated power as it became more and more important for the boroughs to work together with certain commonalities. So that's the big difference. The big difference in tone is that survival in a economic sense is harder in 2045 in a lot of ways. 2020, 2077 are relative times of plenty in terms of what you can buy. You can find just about anything. There's malls, there's stores, there's chains. In 2045, there's less than that, and because there's less, there's more opportunity. To find niches, to fill them, to build something, whether that something is a neighborhood or a business. And that is, in my opinion, the biggest difference between those eras. We also talked about how the edge-running scene changes. In 2020, a lot of the jobs you're going to get are going to come from corporations. The corporations go extract this guy from this corporation, bring him to us so that he can work for us. Go assassinate this person. Go steal this prototype. That kind of thing.
You became. Oh, there you go. You became muffled there for a second. I think you probably.
Yeah.
Yep.
In 2077, you're more through the cracks, and it's just whatever jobs are left over that aren't being done by big corporate bosses, or corporate strike teams, corporate operatives. In 2045, a lot of your jobs are going to come from all over the place. There's not going to be as many big corporate jobs, or if they are, they're going to be corporate jobs that are done by individuals. Reaping the Reaper is a really good example of that. And a lot of your jobs are going to be more, have a better chance of being, I'm going to call them free amigo jobs. Clear out this gang. Do this thing. Make sure my shipment arrives. Find this. I need more. The fixer needs more product, so please go get the stuff off this boat that I've heard about. The jobs are going to come. Their jobs are going to come at a much more local and more interesting level. I think not more interesting, more interesting in the local personal level.
Right, where they have like a distinct and better than average opportunity that it has a personal stake for you if you live in that area. That job gets done.
If you're working for a corporation, the best you can do is use the information you get for some insider trading and future jobs to them. If you're doing jobs in 2045, you may become much more personally involved in those.
Yeah, no, that
Okay.
makes sense.
That actually, 'cause I've tried to describe it before, but I think that is the best way to look at it, is just like how personal the job is to you. What do we got here? Jamcom. Hi. NorCal Military Base has a lot of love in NC 2045. Due to production limits, there might be ideas left out on the cutting room floor. While we know you don't take favorites in your work, are there any highlights you want to share regarding your work on the district that moved from concept to full production?
So nothing ended up in the cutting room floor for anything I wrote. Because I'm the one who set the word count, I was very aware of it as I was writing. And I was able to fit into things I really wanted to fit in. For NorCal Military Base, I'm very fond of the Evangelion call out, where the school and the main command center both sink beneath the ground when things get hairy. I thought that was just a little bit of fun, entirely impractical, kind of silly. But I was like, oh, you know what? That's a great scene in Evangelion when the entire city just sinks below the ground. I really like that, and I liked it in StartPlaying too, where they're below ground. So I thought that was neat. I wanted to pay homage to that in a small way. Evangelion is one of the few cyberpunk-ish animes we haven't really touched on playing tribute to in Cyberpunk, though more in Mechton. And I just wanted to do that.
Yeah, no, fair.
Something I found that kind of stuck out to me, and Emmerron just kind of like made it worse for me, was just the COG Scouts. I'm like, oh gosh, the Scouts are here. They're okay.
That was fun. Coming up with the concept of
what have you done?
Coming up with the concept that everyone on the military base is part of the military.
Yeah,
that was fun. There are no civilians on the NorCal military base, and then figuring out how that actually works, because you marry someone and they move on to the base, they're not going to start carrying a rifle and join a unit, but they have to work for the base now. That's just part of the gig. And then what happens when you militarize children and of course that's just really an extension of Boy Scouts in general, because Boy Scouts are designed to be to have a military like structure.
It's a pipeline.
That was recently.
But I wanted to explore, what is that like? And so that was a fun thing to write.
Oh gosh, you just made a military yo gang.
I believe. I believe we may have mentioned this to you before, Jay, one way or another, but both Diamond and I are Eagle Scouts, so both of us saw that pipeline from the ground. Oh, yeah. She just didn't realize it was a pipeline. So
I'm an Eagle Scout too. So I get it. Also, and that's also real world inspiration, because it used to be that, like, for example, around World War II, British private schools, the British boys' schools, they taught their kids how to fight, because you never know when the Germans are going to invade. So they're like, oh, you're going to learn how to fire a cannon now, because that's just part of your daily course load.
Yeah.
And also being told that the Baden-Powell scouts of World War I were also messengers, and it's just like having been a senior patrol leader and looking at like some of these 10-year-old, 11-year-old boys that I would have to look after. It's just like I could not send these guys into. I wouldn't. It would make me sick to send these guys into danger.
And to be fair, the military base doesn't. But should the military base ever be invaded, in theory, all those kids at that school, the school would go down. But the older kids, they would be called out if they absolutely because what are they going to? It's either that or they die. It is a. If you were born on that base, chances are you're going to die on that base or in service to that base.
Oh boy!
Oh dear.
So the next
moving on.
Yeah, so after that happy little note, Roelio submitted a question saying, I'm really loving everything that's been put out. and this is a question where I'm imagining you may not be able to talk about this, but
Okay.
what makes you or your team decide on what gets released next, whether that's a DLC or a full-blown like supplement or expansion? They ask, is it a list that you schedule some of these things out, or is it like a spontaneous thing where you kind of throw things in as they make sense? I know you've talked a little bit about some of how at least Night City 2045 got fit into the larger structure here, but beyond just the big books, how did the small stuff get decided?
For the small stuff, I'll speak to the DLCs. That's the easiest thing. We try to schedule roughly 3 months out. Some things I know well in advance. I try to come up with April Fools in advance. So, I try to, that kind of thing. But we try to schedule. But we also remain super flexible because you never know. You're going to have a really great idea, or you're just not going to have time, or you didn't work on that one thing. So you slot something in. So it is a generally a 3-month incredibly liquid schedule.
Okay.
With like 12 days and April Fools being a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, we know we're going to do something. We just don't know what the concepts are super ahead of time. We try to come up with the December. We try to come up with the concepts around September. Sometimes we come up with it earlier. April, it's like literally we start thinking of April, and then when we know when it hits us and we can do it. So, and Halloween sometimes to some degree, we try to think of in advance. Those 3 marks. Other than that, we just we stay ahead, and sometimes it's obvious and sometimes it's not.
Sure. Yeah. No, and that makes perfect sense. And I know you've kind of talked about that with us before. We were like, oh yeah, that might be a good idea for a DLC in the future, and it's very much like when inspiration strikes. Then go ahead.
No, that's it.
Oh, okay, cool. I thought you had something to add. So the next question we got was from Sparky McDibbin, which he self-admittedly mentioned that later this was a reference. What is best in life in Night City?
Okay, so that's a Conan reference. I do get it. I'm going to say this first of all. If you want to know about Conan, go read the books. The movies do Conan a disservice. Conan is a much more nuanced and interesting character in the books, though be aware for an unfortunate amount of it's problematic content indicative of the times they are written. That being said, so the answer blah 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 is drive my enemies before me, the lamentations of their women. It's I'm going to say this. The answer is there is no answer. The answer is the core principle of Cyberpunk has and always has been, as Mike says, make it personal. And making it personal means you have your character needs motivations. In my opinion, every character is incomplete if you do not know what motivates them to be an edge runner.
Sure.
And that is something you need to decide either when you make them or as you play them. And that can change. It can evolve. It can resolve itself even. If your motivation is to save someone and you save them, that's no longer your motivation, obviously.
Right.
But it's very important as someone playing an edge runner in a campaign, in any campaign. This is true of any character. Why is your character there? Why is your character risking life at them to do this? And that is what is best for an edge runner.
Yeah. Well, and I know there have even been discussions at my table before where late in the campaign, especially, some of the players feel like, I don't know that I'd even run with the crew anymore after I've gotten this done. Because I feel like I fulfilled what's my purpose? This was my purpose.
So here's something I'm going to say. It's very important. And I'll give you permission. It is okay for you to stop playing a character.
Yeah.
Obviously, you probably still want to play in the game, so you'll need a new character. But is it okay? It is okay for you to say, my character's arc is over, or I'm not having fun with this character, and to say, okay, it's time to this character to retire. It's time for this character to die in the blaze of glory. It's time to, however you're going to go out. But it's okay to stop playing a character because your character's story is done.
Yeah. Well, and I know I've had it happen a few times at my table now. On both of those, either they feel like I've completed my character's reason, or I'm no longer having fun. What can we do instead? And it's I've definitely always kept that open as like if you don't want to do that, we can slot you in midway with a character that has roughly the same experience level as your last one, so that we can keep the flow of things moving. Just know that there's probably going to be some degree of like, you're going to lose some stuff in the middle there because they don't have all the resources your old character did.
Right.
Yeah. So it is always a fun, how do we figure this out sort of situation. So the last one that I'll read here. So we've got a question from Party Time Porcupine, which is a great name.
That is great.
That is a great name. The question is, do you see there being any balance concerns with using medical grade cyber arms for the artificial shoulder mount? And would you view those being used together as at odds with the intent behind either of those items?
Okay. So there are two reasons to get an artificial shoulder mount and then put 2 extra medical grade cyber arms on. First of all, I would say, this is very much a GM's call, but I would personally say the purpose of medical grade cyber arms is to replace actual arms.
Right.
And therefore, medical grade cyber arms, I would give them humanity loss. And so there'd be no point to them because you are doing something beyond it. You are doing something that goes beyond the human baseline. You are not replacing, you are not restoring yourself to the human baseline. You are going beyond it by giving yourself extra arms. There are extra arms, whether they're medical grade or not, and the extra arms change. If anything, the way your brain has to think, because it's moving 4 arms at once. I've always also assumed the artificial shoulder mount has some co-processors that help the brain with that.
Sure.
So my answer is there's no point to it because I would ding you for the humanity loss anyway.
Yeah.
That being said, there's 2 reasons to have, in my opinion. One is the style. I just want extra arms, but I don't want the humanity loss. I just want to look cool. Okay, I get that. Maybe. If I were in a very loose game where I was like, oh, if you want to look cool and you're never going to take any advantages from that, other than the fact that you have 4 arms, you just want to look cool, I can deal with that. The other is to get the benefits of multi-arm melee, or to get the benefits of like holding multiple weapons, blah, blah, blah. And that goes back to then, you're getting a benefit from it. You're trying to bypass the system. No.
Right.
I would personally say no. You cannot put, even if you put medical grade cyber arms on, they're going to ding you the same amount as regular cyber arms because of that.
Yeah.
Because it's just you're moving beyond the human baseline. That is not the spirit of what it's like. It's like saying, would putting a second heart in my chest cause humanity loss? Yes.
Yeah.
You don't need a second heart.
Yeah. Well,
if the first one's working fine.
And correct me if I'm wrong, because Diamond, you might be able to chime in on this. Medical grade is cheaper than buying the full cyber arms. Yeah, that's what I thought.
Absolutely.
So there's that might be the other incentive is a financial one. Is I couldn't afford to buy the full, but you would probably still ding humanity losses if they had installed the full one. I would too.
If this situation came up and I was being generous, I would say you pay the 50. You take the full humanity loss, but you don't get the benefits of a cyber arm, like for example, being able
installing
to
a discount limb.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, you're not able to do you can't put slide anything into it, and you can't use it to move thick cover or break thick cover.
Sure.
But yes, but I personally would not allow it at all.
Fair. No.
It's a rules layery dodge, and I will not have it.
I would agree. I would still HL you like you just got a cyber arm installed and you would go with that. Like, yeah.
One lone, like you're borging yourself up. That it's just like you're going beyond the human limit.
Well beyond, yeah. So, but yeah. So then that Diamond, I will leave the remainder of the questions to you. So, some of these are kind of personal ones.
Well, first one I'll actually cover.
Not personal that way.
Last one's from a really close friend of mine, but Fiberpunk does ask, were there any aspects in the book's creation that you and the writers had some disagreements in over terms of the way the world should be presented?
Oh, no. I am absolutely wonderfully fortunate in that I was working with a group of professionals who understood the assignment. And the assignment was that they were writing for us. And it's very important. Now, that being said, I was not a tyrant about it. At least I hope I was not. We gave them the information, and then they did concept stage, rough, final. And concept stage, we went over a lot of things. It's like, okay, I don't like this, take it out, but I like this. And there were times, and then at the very end, there's a final review stage where I give it to them and I say, okay, here's what we're publishing. This is after I've gone through my pass, James has gone through his pass, and we've made changes based on anything from readability to lore changes that happened that you were not privy to, and I'm not going to ask you to rewrite because we're past your final draft and it's not fair. This area didn't, this location just didn't feel right for this area, so we moved it. And then I said, okay, and sometimes some of them came back to me and said, well, you changed this person's name and it's important for me that it be this name because it's a tribute to a friend. Like, okay, I'll change it back. Or you added this location afterwards and the location's fine, but the names you chose make no sense in Japanese. Okay, cool. Give me the right names for it. So no, I did not have any disagreements. There were no arguments. I was very fortunate with the group I have.
I mean, you looking at the cast, when you announced it, it was a pretty all-star cast going in.
Yeah.
And they understood, and I was upfront with that actually in the beginning. I said, okay, your work will be edited. Your work will be edited for any number of reasons. Here are some of the reasons. And just be aware that what you give me may not be exactly what's in the final book. And that's the nature of work for hire.
Yep.
Sure.
And I assume the integrity of most things was kept the same.
I did my best. Yeah. That was important. That's why we showed it to kids, because when this can happen. I could show it to them and they say, okay, this is no longer cool. Take my name off the book. I think you've changed this too much. No one's ever done that to me, but it's something that I give them the opportunity to do.
Yeah. No, fair enough.
And they still get paid. They get paid one way or the other because the final draft they check comes after their payment's already sent to them.
Yeah.
So, and then the last one, it comes from my dear friend Fish. Yes, sandwich guy Fish. While looking through Night City 2045, I noticed there are locations with question marks for the location on the map. What the security is, also the utility code. Is this a placeholder or room for the game master to fill in the blanks as they need?
Okay, so there's a couple things here. One, there are some locations that are not mapped. They are mentioned in the district, but they do not have they are not put on the map. And in the key for the map, they're always listed as not on the map or something like that. And usually that's because it's unknown as to where they are, or they're mobile, or there's multiple of them and they're transitory. The nomad camps in the outskirts, for example, or Duck Duck Dead in Sunset City is mobile, and so it's never in the same place twice.
Sure.
So that's one reason why there's an unknown. And sometimes we'll say security code unknown, security code question mark, because the Dark Zone 1 is, for example. I think we may even say security level. We leave that open. It's it's a mystery, and it's up to the GM to determine how that mystery is solved. And part of that is it's not written because the writer doesn't know in world.
Yeah, no, that's fair. So in some cases,
none of them are placeholders. None of the placeholders. I was very, very, very diligent about removing all the placeholder XXs.
Yeah, the page XX security threat rating XX. Yeah. No, fair, and that. But yeah, making it be like a symbol almost for GM. This is your blank right here. Have fun with it. Yeah.
Okay. Which personally, I'm a fan of that, where there's just GM fiat, because anytime I hear Dark Zone, though, it's just the Division. That is my first thought. Is just dangerous place right there. Pacific Arcology. I feel like I missed that thing in 2077.
No, the Pacific Arcology is from 2020, and it is definitely gone by 2077. Or if it's not gone, it is off the map and you never visit it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, but yeah, of course, Jay, thank you so much for coming and answering questions. Do you have any final news, comments, statements, snide remarks you would like to give the audience? Also, because I know we are kind of coming down to the wire here.
Just, I hope you enjoy Night City 2045. The team worked really, really hard on it. Our artists worked hard on the art. The writers worked hard on the writing. The editors worked hard on the editing. The layout guy, that's me, worked really hard on the layout. It is the result, and I mean this in all manners, it is a result of not just 2 years of work, which is the active project time roughly, or 5 or 6 years of work, which is the time, since the Jumpstart kit came out, but 30 years of work, because it is the culmination of everything that has come before it, whether it be the original Cyberpunk or 2020 or Red or 2077. It all came together into this, and please use the heck out of it. When you get the physical copy, wear out your physical copy. When you get the digital copy, leave lots of notes and comments using your PDF reader of choice.
Yeah,
so that you can have it. Please enjoy it.
Also, for all of you who are listening, you can use code Wireheads over at the Artval web store to get 10% off. Which the physical books, that's the 17th next month, right? Origins?
Yes, so it will come out at Origins. If you have ordered it and you're at Origins, please come by our room. We'll have a room there. You'll be able to pick it up there. There'll be a procedure for that. If you if you have pre-ordered it, it will probably ship, I believe, around the 24th, because basically it'll ship once our stock goes back from Origins to the warehouse. It'll ship to everyone else. It'll also start shipping to distribution at that point, and you'll be able to find it in your local store a few weeks after that, depending on how fast the distribution moves it.
And Bits and Mortar will.
Bits and Mortar, yeah.
Said.
Yeah, around the 17th, probably right before Origins, I will upload it to Bits and Mortar.
Sweet.
Beautiful. Well, Jay, thank you. As Diamond said, thank you again for joining us once more to talk about Cyberpunk, for sharing your insights on the world, and giving us, honestly, one of the most comprehensive dossiers of information, together with the writing and editing and art teams that have produced the beautiful book that is Night City 2045. Chat, whether you are here with us live on Twitch or you're watching us later over on the YouTube or the Spotify, this is where we wrap up today's show. So thank you all for watching. We hope you all have a wonderful morning, evening, or afternoon wherever you're in the world. Stay healthy, stay safe. Till we see you all again. Peace.
Bye all.
Bye-bye.